The date is May 28th, 2020. Can I have a roll call?
Stephanie Eicher.
Here.
Ellen McKay.
Here.
Tanya Hickok.
Here.
Dave Hale.
Here.
Dale Smythe.
Here.
Monica Emerton.
Here.
Jonathan Lang.
Here.
Jackie Savina.
Here.
Thank you.
The next on the agenda is minutes. There are no minutes, so we'll move on to C, special order of business, executive sessions. Are there any disclosures? Seeing none, we'll move forward to the consent agenda. We have 3 resolutions for approval. Do we do them individually? Can I have a motion for approval?
This is Stephanie. I move to approve.
Do we have a second? Can you please put your motion in the WebEx as well? We have Stephanie Eicher motion for approval with a second from Board Member Hale. Are there any objections to the consent agenda? Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none? Are there any objections? Shall we do a roll call? We'll just approve as noted, since there are no objections noted. Appearance request, I don't believe there are any. Unfinished business and actions of public hearings, there are none. The next would be the regular agenda. We have 1 resolution for approval. I guess we're going to move on straight to public hearings. The case number is 2020-0039, and the applicant is Mike Griffin.
I'm here. Homeowners Michael and Tammy Griffin are present.
Okay. Should I do that one first? Yeah. Will the staff please describe notice given in the case?
On February 21st, 2020, a total of 132 public hearing notices were mailed. No comments from the public or the Scenic Foothills Community Council were received pertaining to this hearing.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, will the staff please present the case?
This is a request to allow an expanded deck on a zero lot line single-family home to encroach 6 feet into the required 20-foot front setback. The petitioner recently expanded the deck prior to obtaining a building permit and subsequently initiated the building permit process when code enforcement officials notified the petitioner that a permit was required. During the building permit process, the petitioner discovered that a dimensional variance is required for the deck due to the 6-foot encroachment into the 20-foot front setback. The recent deck expansion increased the previously existing encroachment from 5 feet to 6 feet. The petitioner received a nonconforming status determination on December 11th, 2008, and this is included in this packet as attachment 3. They granted the previous deck a certificate of nonconforming encroachment because it existed prior to January 1st, 1986, as allowed in AMC 2112-040E, legalization of nonconforming dimensional setback encroachments. The previously existing deck encroached a total of 5 feet into the 20-foot front setback. By reconstructing and expanding the deck by 1 foot, the petitioner violated AMC 2112-040A, continuation of nonconforming structures generally, thus forfeiting rights previously conferred through the 2008 Certificate of Nonconforming Encroachment. For this reason, the petitioner is seeking a dimensional variance for the expanded deck. For agency comments, none of the reviewing agencies objected to the variance request. Looking at findings, for Standard A, the standard is not substantially met. The petitioner's lot is not subject to any extraordinary physical circumstances, and at approximately 5,103 square feet is similar in size to other lots in the Brookridge subdivision. However, since the petitioner's lot abuts the curve of an eyebrow cul-de-sac, the front lot line is curved and therefore irregularly shaped when compared to most of the rectangular lots in Brookridge subdivision. While potentially a limiting factor for new elements of the property, the lot's irregular shape does not have any bearing on the expansion of the previously existing deck. Standard B, standard is not substantially met. There are no exceptional physical circumstances, and strict application of the code would not create undue hardship or deprive the petitioner of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. In his application, the petitioner documents that several nearby properties have decks that appear as large or larger than the petitioner's expanded deck. Even if those decks do encroach into setbacks, any encroachments present on nearby properties would not mitigate the fact of the petitioner's encroachment. Standard C, the standard is not substantially met. The hardship is self-imposed because the petitioner expanded the deck despite having been in receipt of a certificate of nonconforming encroachment for the previously existing 5-foot deck encroachment. Standard D, the standard is substantially met. The additional 1-foot deck encroachment is minor and does not impact the use of adjacent property. Standard E is substantially met. The requested variance is dimensional and would not allow a prohibited use or change the character of the zoning district. Standard F is substantially met. There are no identified health or safety issues with the structure or proposed encroachment. Standard G is substantially met. The standard is not applicable to detached single-family residences, duplexes, and triplexes. Standard H is also substantially met. The requested variance is the minimum variance that would allow continued use of the recently expanded deck. With that being said, the Department finds that standards A, B, and C are not substantially met, and therefore recommends denial of the variance. If, after a public hearing, the Board finds that all 8 standards are substantially met, then the approval should be subject to the conditions on page 4 of the staff report. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Ms. Eicher has a question.
Thank you. Through the chair, staff, could you refresh my memory if the petitioner previously had a nonconforming status determination and then added an additional foot? If we deny the variance today, does that negate the original nonconforming status determination in entirety, such that they don't have the ability to have the 5-foot deck, or the 5-foot, or is it just a reduction in 1 foot? Could you refresh my memory on how that works?
The 5-foot deck would still be allowed.
Okay, so they'd still be able to have a deck, just not the additional foot.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, through the chair, if I heard you correctly, they would still be able to have a deck. The deck would be permitted to be 5 feet, just not 6 feet. Is that correct?
Correct. The original nonconforming determination would stand.
Okay, thank you. No further questions for me.
Board Member Hale has a question.
Yes, through the chair, I just wanted to ask staff, this looked like the non-conforming letter went to Michael Griffin, who is the same as the owner tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I guess I'll follow up later. Thank you.
My turn.
Are there any further questions of the board? Seeing none, are there any questions of staff by the applicant?
Yes, the 2008.
I'm sorry, you need to say and spell your name.
My name is Tammy Griffin. I am one of the homeowners
Tammy and Michael Griffin at 2800 Brookridge Circle. And the home was purchased in 1994 with the deck with the 5-foot variance. At the time of purchase, the homeowner was not notified, and we did not know that there was a variance even in place. And in 2008,
Is this part of
neither
your testimony or a
Griffin-
question of staff?
We don't know what you're talking about with the 2008 variant. We bought the house in 1994, and we have never done anything to the deck until this current repair.
Staff, can you respond to the applicant?
Yes, so there was no previous variance. What we're referring to is a 2008 non-conforming determination that stated that due to a provision in code where structures or encroachments existing in homes built prior to 1986 that do not pose life and safety hazards were allowed to continue. That letter, the 2008 letter, acknowledged that the deck was built as part of a home that was existing prior to that date. So the deck was legally non-conforming as of that letter with a 5-foot encroachment. So it's not a variance that we're talking about. It's a certificate of non-conforming. It's a determination.
Well, here's my question.
Can you please state your name and spell your name for the...
Mike Griffin. This is Mike Griffin, homeowner. And my question is, it's a zero lot line. I originally bought both sides. And the side next to me now has a deck. And the deck that I just repaired and refinished is symmetrical with the existing deck next door, and it is not outside the scope of other structures in the neighborhood, including decks, width, length, and encroachments on right-of-way. And also, in the same effect, being how my house is located on a cul-de-sac,
We need to state your question, please, for staff.
my question is, why do I have a problem putting less than 12 square feet on the front of my deck that has no problems, doesn't create any problems with architecturally or usage in this subdivision? And I just have to think that this is nitpicking over something that everybody in the neighborhood has 10 times bigger deck, and I'm just trying to figure out how 11 square feet is going to destroy the world for the municipality. I just don't get it. I just don't. I don't understand.
So are you requesting a question from staff regarding why you need the variance in the first place?
My question is that I would think that in this case, and I know you guys have your job to do, that common sense would prevail and just say, hey, what does it mean to anybody else? And I've got
you need to form a question for staff specific to his statement.
I just want to get through this. I'm at past.
You will have a 10 minutes for your application. Until then, can you form your question for staff, or shall you wait for your 10 minutes?
We'll wait.
Okay, thank you. So, the applicant has a total of 10 minutes to present their case and may reserve time for rebuttal. Throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests upon the applicant to convince the board by a preponderance of evidence that the variance should be granted. The board members and the staff may then ask questions of the applicant through the chair. Every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and that the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal to Superior Court. Will the applicant please state and spell your name for the record?
Michael Griffin, Griffin, F-F-I-N. Mike.
Would you like
Michael.
to save any time for rebuttal?
I couldn't understand.
Would you like to save any time for rebuttal?
I think Mr. Griffin has already expressed his thoughts. We also presented in writing that we did not feel that any of the item numbers were.
So you have 10 minutes for your opportunity to present your case. We'll start the 10 minutes now.
You already presented. Go ahead.
All I have to say about this is that I feel like the deck that originally was built with a wall that surrounded, enclosed it. The wall rotted off and was ready to fall off. So I tore it off and repaired it. And when I repaired it, it involved extending it out 11 inches, not even a foot. And when I did that, that put me past the original variance that I did not even know that existed. And like I said, for 11 and a half square feet, I cannot for the life of me understand why I cannot get a variance. Why do I, and changing it would cause undue hardship because the deck has deck drainage system in that cost. I spent $1,000 on the material to put that in, and so to tear off or to cut back a foot on the front would just be a monumental task, and it would just destroy the integrity of the entire deck, structurally and aesthetically. And I have 5 of my neighbors are on record, ready to, you could call them and ask them if it varies from the nature of our neighborhood, which involves people that have all through my neighborhood. I sent multiple pictures, 42 pages worth of all the decks, my surrounding neighbors and stuff with their decks. That some of them go all the way within 4 feet of the curb, and they don't have any problem. And I think because my house being in a cul-de-sac, the setback is dives into my property, dives into my lot, and if it was straight across, a straight 90-degree corner at the end of the street here, I don't believe I would have any problem whatsoever because my next door neighbor's house sticks out towards the street 8 feet past my deck, and in a straight line down the street. That house is 8 feet closer to the street than my deck is. So I just don't understand why this is such an issue. I just really think that common sense would prevail and just say, hey, what's 11 square feet, or 11 and a half square feet, and what is there to gain by having me change something that I went to great lengths to make aesthetically pleasing, consistent with the neighborhood architecture, and I just don't understand. And hopefully you guys will talk it over, and common sense will prevail. And you guys will say, okay, we don't need to mess with a guy over 11 square feet of wood that was, not even sticks out as far as the next door neighbor's house does. But anyway, that's what I got to say about that. I have 5 neighbors. You have phone numbers that you can call them. They're willing to make a statement to back me up, saying it doesn't affect the neighborhood in a contrary or bad way. It matches the symmetry with my other half of my zero lot line, and I just hope that we can get this behind us so I can, when I die, then my house will go to my kids, and I won't have this outstanding problem with it. But that's up to you guys. I mean, hopefully, you'll see, take a look at it and say, wow, this is not that big a deal. I could understand if I was putting in a drilling rig in my driveway or a hazardous chemical refinery in the backyard, but this is just less than 12 square feet of wood. And just hopefully you guys will rule in my favor. Thank you.
This is Tammy Griffin, TammyGriffin. The homeowner at 2800 Brookridge Circle. I only wanted to add that in hindsight being 2020, we are truly sorry that a permit was not obtained ahead of time, which would have saved us and you time and certainly us effort and a great deal of money. That said, the deck is built. It is aesthetically pleasing, and we are hoping that the variance will be approved so that additional cost and hardship is not placed on the homeowner with no true gain to the neighborhood or the municipality.
You have 4 minutes and 51 seconds remaining for your rebuttal. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board? None? Are there any questions of the applicant by the staff?
My only question is
It's for the
cost.
the staff will ask you questions. I'm sorry.
Actually, so this is not a question. I would like to correct myself. I was incorrect. I apologize. In answering the previous question about being able to rebuild the deck, I just looked into code, and it is actually, according to 2112.010H, the destruction of the deck would have constituted willful destruction, which would forfeit the nonconforming rights. So it would actually be the opposite of what I said. It would not be able to be, it appears that it would not be able to be rebuilt.
It could not be rebuilt.
Are there any questions of the applicant by the board?
What is the process? As the vote occurred today, we have several neighbors that were willing to call in on our behalf, and is that something that is necessary?
I believe there is a notice on the front page about the 2:30 deadline or 2 o'clock deadline for public testimony, or can we call them now? You're about to open.
Through the chair, I have a question when you have time. This is Dave Hale.
Your question, sir?
Through the chair, just a quick question for staff. When people go through this process to get a non-conforming certificate, is it a pretty enlightening process? I mean, I can't imagine it's just a simple form and just a sign-off. You guys make people aware that if they change anything in the future, that it's going to have repercussions down the road?
Yes, so there's an application process where the applicant submits materials and determination is made by the planning department, and the letter does state, and I quote, the location of the deck does not appear to pose a life safety hazard and is granted a certificate of nonconforming encroachment and enjoys all the protections and privileges afforded a nonconforming structure under AMC 2155. That was the old code reference to the protections and privileges that would be afforded that deck under that code, and they are substantially the same in the new code, and that has been, so it's now falling under the current code.
Is there anyone from the public?
I have one more comment, if I might.
You have time in your rebuttal, ma'am.
I would like to rebuttal the letter of
You have time in your rebuttal.
2008.
This is after the public hearing. So right now, I would like to open the public testimony to testify in case 2020-0039. I believe there are two. Okay.
is this Don Bell?
This is he.
This is Ziba calling for your public testimony on case 2020-0039.
Mm-hmm.
Are you calling as an individual or representative of a group?
I'm just calling as an individual,
Okay.
a neighbor in
Great.
the subdivision.
You'll have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. If you could state your name for the record, you may begin.
My name is Don Bell. I live at 8401 Brook Ridge Drive. And I looked at I've lived in this neighborhood now for almost 33 years. And I've walked around the neighborhood and I've seen other houses that have things that look a lot more out into the driveway area. For example, 2910 Brookview Street, 2930 Brookview Street, 3020 Brookview Street, 3140 Brookview Street, and 8521 Brookway Circle. They all far outside, that they look more godly than what Mr. Griffiths does. I think his looks very professional, and I believe that the variances does not make the house look any different or his neighbors look any different, and it doesn't affect what I can see from my perspective that it would have any variances on why it shouldn't be approved. That 11 inches should be approved, and that's about all I have to say.
Are there any questions by the board members for the public, for Mr. Bell? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Okay, is that all you need? I can hang up?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Is there anybody else wishing to testify?
Yes, we have one more.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. This is Ziba calling for your public testimony on case 2020-0039.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you calling as an individual or a representative of a group?
Individual.
Okay. You'll have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. If you could state your name for the record, you can begin.
Hi, this is Chris Chambers. I am the neighbor of Mike and Tammy Griffin. I'm at 8301 Brook Ridge Drive. In regards to the deck, so I'm the neighbor directly next to him, and Mike has done several home improvements over the last couple of years and really made the house look nice. The old deck up there was rotting away, and it was really not nice to look at. And the new deck is just fantastic. We like looking at it. Seems to be really soundly built, and it looks like it's not too long. It doesn't look like an albatross or anything like that. And he's been a great neighbor over the years too. So there's, from our viewpoint as a neighbor, we don't see anything wrong with it.
Are there any questions of Mr. Chambers by the board members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes public testimony.
Does the staff have any rebuttal?
No rebuttal per se. Let's see. I would like to note that I believe the petitioner brought up several times that the encroachment is minor and does not affect the surrounding neighborhood and is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. I would just like to note that we do recognize through Standard D which reads, the variance if granted will not adversely affect the use of adjacent property as printed under this code. That standard we found to be substantially met and noted that the additional 1-foot deck encroachment is minor. and does not impact the use of adjacent property. And similarly, standard E, the variance if granted does not change the character of the zoning district where the property is located, is in keeping with the intent of the code, and does not permit a use not otherwise permitted in the district in which the property lies. We did note that that is substantially met because the requested variance dimensional would not allow prohibited use or change the character of the zoning district. So the staff report does acknowledge that the deck as it has currently been constructed does not change the character of the neighborhood or impact surrounding properties in that way. The three standards that the petitioner has not met are A, B, and C, which relate to physical circumstances and the hardship being self-imposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Griffin, you have time for your rebuttal. 4 minutes and 51 seconds.
I just wanted to note that at some point during the ownership of 2800 Brookridge Circle, it was determined when the municipality sent out new city maps that were used by delivery vehicles, Google, etc., that we determined that our house number was wrong. Our house number had been 2810 Brookridge Circle for the first 15 years that we owned the property. I don't recall getting a notice in 2008, and I honestly don't recall if it was before or after we had to change our address. We had to do a quick claim deed with our neighbor, and so up until 10 years ago, we were 2810 Brookridge Circle. I don't know if the zero lot next door to us has the exact same plot as our property, and whether or not they received the same notice of the deck, with the understanding that our deck would have to be removed entirely because it would no longer have the 2008 variance approval. It would seem an extreme hardship for the board to not approve the variance. That seems an extreme move to a homeowner and subdivision that is unnecessary and would, in fact, cause hardship to the homeowner. That's it for my rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further motion, the public hearing is closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Motion from Ms. Emerton and seconded by Ms. Eicher. Ms. Emerton, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'll state my motion first. I move to approve case 2020-0039 based on staff or based on the department recommendations on page 4 of the packet.
Ms. Eicher?
Second.
Can you speak to your motion, Ms. Emerton?
Yes. I do intend to support my motion. I agree with staff findings on D through H. I will argue on A, B, and C. The exceptional physical circumstances, I'm going to go with the fact that they are going to not be able to have a deck. I understand that is a bit stretching it, but I think that not being able to have the deck is a physical circumstance for both A and B that we can now argue will make it met. I am struggling with C, with the hardship not being self-imposed, as this was started because they didn't have a permit for the deck. I and I guess I will say the hardship is not self-imposed, potentially because they didn't get the letter from the Muni because of the address snafus. So and that's where I will leave that.
Ms. Eicher, can you speak to your second?
Thank you. I'm actually struggling with this case and right now don't intend to support the motion because while I appreciate that perhaps the exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstances could be derived from the fact that the lot does exist on a cul-de-sac and therefore it cuts in a little bit, all codes, as we've seen over the years, necessitate some imposition on the lots. And that's the prerogative of the code and the municipality in passing the code. So I'm having a hard time seeing what about this lot is exceptional or extraordinary. I struggle also with B because, and that's why I asked the question of staff, if the property owner would just lose the additional foot that they built or all of the non-conforming rights, because while I do believe I do concur with board member Emerton that, a deck is a pretty commonly enjoyed right by other people, and removal of the entire thing would be an extreme hardship. I am stuck at C, and C to me seems like this is a matter that is entirely self-imposed, and it's very hard to understand, or I guess be put in the position of having to grant variances after the fact when it seems like the board or the petitioners were in a position to be relatively informed of the process and had already received a letter of non-conforming rights. I do agree with staff and the balance of their findings for the standards, but at this time, I don't plan to support the motion, but I do welcome comments from the other board members.
Board Member Hale, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I do, and I'm struggling with C as well, and mostly because I've been involved in a lot of muni processes. I do it for a living, and I know that none of it's simple. So if you go to get a letter of anything, non-conforming or whatever, it's quite the process, and it's quite a learning process, and I can't believe that after you've gone through that anyone would not know that they needed a permit for a deck like that. So I don't think that I'm going to be able to get past C, the self-imposed part of things, because I really believe that someone who's gone to this level to get a non-conforming certificate, that they had to know that a permit was required, and by not doing that, they really put themselves in a bad position. That's all I have to say.
We did not get.
I'm sorry, you cannot speak.
We never got the non.
I'm sorry, ma'am, you can't.
We never applied for that.
This is
that was
a matter for the board, ma'am.
did.
Ma'am, this is a matter for the board. Mr.
Smythe,
Smythe, you have a comment? Pardon, Mr. Hale?
If I could follow up to the chair, the non-conforming certificate here, or determination, was for a Michael Griffin. So they're not going to give Michael Griffin this determination without Michael Griffin applying for it. So how you guys could not know about it.
I'm telling you, Mr. Griffin did not apply.
I'm sorry, ma'am, you're not allowed to speak.
2008.
Out of order. Mr. Smythe, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I do intend to support the motion. I think the petitioner's comment on common sense is exactly why this board exists, and we have to look at things that don't exactly match all of the specific language. I think I've dealt with the municipality on many levels on elements much more severe and serious than this, and I have to agree that a deck 1 foot into the setback, for whatever reason, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt of how it was constructed and what they've told us today, and I do understand the frustration because the communication that comes from the city on specific requirements is limited. And it's difficult for a homeowner to understand, and I think we all need to recognize that. The process for the history of this and whether or not it was met the zoning requirements, I would have to, I could easily see their point of view. So my point is, again, that the reason we're here and why I intend to support it is because I believe those are met, and that the requirements to meet strict adherence to the code do not match the intent. So I'm going to say that I'm going to support it. That's all. Through the chair.
Thank you. Commissioner McKay, you have a comment?
I too have struggled with this case, particularly the petitioner did state that we do have a job to do, and we do. And one of the main thing that we have to do is find that all 8 of these standards are met. And by the petitioner's own statement on Standard A, he says there are no extraordinary physical circumstances pertaining to streams, wetlands, or slope. And he didn't, in the written part, they didn't really make a good case for A. I can get by with the cul-de-sac and the fact that this 1 foot is de minimis. And then when we get to Standard B, I can go with that a deck is a common right of enjoyment, and they keep not knowing about the non-conforming letter, although it is on pages 22 through 24 of the packet, obviously addressed to them. The one thing it doesn't say is about if you destroy the deck, you lose the right. It isn't stated in that letter. And in the end, I am going to support the motion. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I believe we need to take a vote.
Ms. Iker?
Yes.
Ms. McKay?
Yes.
Ms. Hickok?
Yes.
Mr. Hale?
No.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Ms. Emerton?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
No.
Ms. Sabina?
Yes.
Thank you.
By a vote of 6-2, this motion passes.
I hope I'm not out of order by saying thank you.
No, thank you.
What's next?
Case number action by the board shall require a favorable vote of the majority of the fully constituted board. The fully constituted board shall include all members of the board, including vacancies not excused for conflicts of interest. For a variance to be granted, all 8 standards must be met. Every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal to the Superior Court. In case 2020-0042, applicant Brad and Christy DeNoble. Will the staff please describe the notice given in this case?
On February 21st, 2020, a total of 82 public hearing notices were mailed. 3 comments from the public were received. None from the community council were received. 3 comments. Of the 3 comments, 2 were in favor or in support of the variance. The other was not opposed, but just had an objection to a alleged mischaracterization of the easement that pertains to the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the sufficient notice of this case? Seeing none, will the staff please present the case?
This is a request to allow an existing deck to continue encroaching 15 feet into a required 25-foot side setback on the eastern lot line. The deck is attached to a single-family home that also encroaches 15 feet into the same required 25-foot side setback. Because the single-family home was constructed prior to January 1st, 1986, it is considered legally nonconforming pursuant to AMC 2112-040E, legalization of nonconforming dimensional setback encroachments. The single-family home is therefore enjoys the rights afforded by a certificate of nonconforming encroachment as recognized by the nonconforming status determination issued on December 23, 2019. Petitioners have included this determination as Exhibit B in their application. However, the encroaching deck that is attached to the single-family home was added sometime after January 1, 1986, which means that the deck is not considered a legal nonconforming structure. The petitioners are therefore requesting this variance to allow the deck to continue encroaching 15 feet into the required 25-foot side setback on the eastern lot line. Due to an unrelated dispute, in 2018, the petitioners obtained an easement on the lot line, on the lot abutting their lot to the east that prohibits any permanent structures from being built within 18 feet of the petitioner's eastern lot line, which is the lot line in question for the variance. The petitioners have provided documentation of this easement as Exhibit E in their application. There is also a significant topography present on the petitioner's lot in addition to an unnamed stream. Community comments, as I noted previously, there were 2 comments in support of the variance and 1 objecting to the characterization of the easement I just described, but not objecting to the variance itself. And for agency comments, none of the reviewing agencies objected to the variance request. Findings, Standard A, the standard is substantially met. There is steep topography on the petitioner's lot, as shown on the topographic map provided in the application. An unnamed stream also runs southwest through approximately the northern third of the petitioner's lot. These 2 factors constrain the buildable area of the lot, and the existing single-family home and deck appear to have been built in one of the few portions of the lot suitable for development. In this way, the home and deck have minimized the disturbance of steep slopes as called for in the Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan update. Standard B, because of these physical circumstances, the strict application of this code creates an exceptional or undue hardship, and the standard is substantially met. While the topography on the petitioner's lot is no steeper than the topography of nearby lots in the same zoning district, strict application of code in conjunction with constraints posed by the slopes and the stream referenced in Standard A would create an undue hardship by requiring removal of the deck. And decks are amenities commonly enjoyed. Due to the restricted topography and the setbacks surrounding the stream, there would be few, if any, options for the petitioners to relocate the existing deck. Standard C, the standard is substantially met. The hardship is not self-imposed because although the deck was added after the single-family home that it is attached to, it is clear that from the access door as visible in the 1985 assessment photograph in Exhibit C of the petitioner's application that the deck was planned as part of the original structure. Therefore, the deck's encroachment was not a result of the petitioner's actions or even the actions of other recent owners. Standard D, the standard is substantially met. The variance did not adversely affect the use of adjacent property. The deck was constructed in the years following 1985 and has been in existence ever since. And there is still a 10-foot, and in addition to that, there is still 10 feet between the deck and the eastern side lot line. Also, the 18-foot easement on abutting Lot 2, referenced in Exhibit E of the petition application, prohibits any permanent structures from being built within 28 feet of the encroaching deck, and that would be the existing 10-foot distance to the lot line plus the 18-foot easement. This 28-foot distance exceeds the existing required 25-foot side setback requirement. Standard E is substantially met. The requested variance is dimensional and will not allow prohibited use or change the character of the zoning district. Standard F is substantially met. There are no identified health or safety issues. G is substantially met. The standard is not applicable to detached single-family residences, duplexes, and triplexes. H is also substantially met. The requested variance is the minimum variance that would allow continued use of the deck. That being said, the department finds that all standards are substantially met and therefore recommends approval of the variance subject to the conditions on page 4 of the staff report. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Seeing none. Are there any questions of staff by the applicant?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. The applicant has a total of 10 minutes to present their case and may reserve time for rebuttal. Throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests upon the applicant to convince the board by a preponderance of evidence that the variance shall be granted. The board members and the staff may then ask questions of the applicant through the chair. Will the applicant please state your name for the record?
Brad and Christy DeNoble.
Please go ahead and present your case.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Brad DeNoble, and I live at 32323 Mount Coral Hess Circle in Eagle River. Thank you very much for your time and consideration of our variance application for our deck. We are not asking to enlarge our deck, enclose it, or anything of that nature. Rather, we simply want to be able to keep and maintain the deck as it has been for the past 34 years. We are considering a small addition to our house as it keeps getting smaller and smaller as my twins keep getting bigger and bigger. And it was during our review of this matter that we discovered that our house and deck were built approximately 10 feet from our property line. We were able to obtain a letter of non-conforming structure for our house since it was constructed prior to January 1, 1986. However, we discovered that the deck, which the house is designed for as it has double doors leading out onto the deck, was constructed sometime after the last photo in the Muni's file on the property in December 1985 and before June 15, 1986, which is the date of the aerial photo we have which shows the deck. As such, we missed not being able to get a letter of non-conforming structure for the deck by a mere few months. Accordingly, the Muni informed us that we need to either get a variance or, should the Muni choose to do so, it could require us to take down our deck. Given that the design of the house calls for the deck since it was constructed with double doors leading out to the deck, the use of the doors and the deck are essential since that is how everyone enters our house unless you are us and we go through the door in our garage. And our planned addition requires the use thereof. We have applied and respectfully request that the board grant our variance. We agree with planning staff that we believe that we have substantially satisfied all the requirements for granting a variance as required by the code. There are substantial, exceptional, and extraordinary physical circumstances. We are a corner lot. We have, as a corner lot, we have 3 25-foot setbacks. Our property is at the base of a mountain, has variable terrain and topography, and has considerable slope and elevation gain. And additionally, we have a stream that runs through our entire property about 30 feet, 25, 30 feet from behind our house. So our options, where the house was located was pretty much located in the only place that it could be. So we do think that there are exceptional, extraordinary physical circumstances. And because of those circumstances, we think that strict application of the code would create an exceptional or undue hardship on us. The property, like I said, is unusual and it's unique. It's a corner lot, has significant elevation gain, and has a stream that cuts it in two. The house was located physically in about the only place it could have been due to the terrain and the topography and the stream. However, it was located in an area where there are setbacks all around it and a stream behind it, which pretty much eliminates any other options to remodel the house or to provide another source of ingress and egress with another deck. And as I mentioned earlier, too, the house was designed and built with the doors in front of the house for the purpose of leading onto the deck, which, like I said, too, was apparently completed a few months after 1985, and therefore we did not get grandfathered in. We feel that strict application of the code requiring removal would also cause exceptional undue hardship by basically eliminating our front door. The deck is where everybody enters our house and leaves our house, except for the owners, my wife and I, who, we have a door that leads from the house the garage into the house, and we use that. But everybody else uses those doors in the deck, and it is absolutely critical to our house. If we had to remove that deck, it would totally destroy our just the whole flow of the house, and it also is a pretty critical safety feature as well, we think, because, like I said, we've got it's right. The doors are by our wood stove, and they provide a significant safety feature to be able to get out of the house if need be. So we think that these circumstances, that the strict application of the code would create a serious and significant undue hardship on my wife and I and our family. As to the third criteria, as staff mentioned, the house was designed with the decks, with the doors leading out of the decks. We have not done anything to the deck. We have not moved it. We have not changed it in any way. This deck is exactly as it existed back in sometime between December 1985 and June of 1986. And so we think like I say, that was designed. We didn't have anything to do with it. We haven't made any changes to the deck, and so we feel like that criteria is satisfied as well. We also believe that the variance is not going to adversely affect the use of the adjacent property. As staff mentioned, we currently have a permanent easement with our neighbor, Sonia Amundsen. And what it does is it provides us with exclusive use of 18 feet of her property from my property line towards their property. So like staff said, essentially we have about 28 feet from the corner of our house to where our neighbor could even begin making any use of her property. So we don't think it's going to affect, well, we know it's not going to affect adjacent property. And moreover, this request it's for a dimensional variance, and it's not for a use that's unauthorized in the neighborhood or by the Anchorage 2020 plan. The variance won't increase neighborhood traffic, negatively impact Ms. Amundsen, violate the spirit of the zoning laws, or risk public safety, health, or welfare. And as far as criteria number 5 goes, it's not going to change the character of the zoning district. Like I mentioned, it's a dimensional variance, and it's not for a particular type of use of the property, and therefore granting the variance will not change the character of the zoning district. It's in keeping with the intent of the code, and it will have no effect on the uses or the character of the neighborhood. The 6th criteria is, if the variance is granted, is it not adversely affect health, safety, and welfare of the people of the municipality. It doesn't do any of those. It doesn't create any safety standards or traffic issues or create issues with the fire department or Department of Health and Human Services, or it doesn't affect standards for air, water quality, or noise level. Those are all some of the guidelines that the Muni suggests when you look at that standard. So that's why I mentioned those. And then the 7th one is the variance is not required in order to meet ADA requirements. And then finally, the variance is granted is the minimum variance that will make it possible for reasonable uses, because basically it will give our property parity with our neighbors, and it will allow us to continue to make use of our grandfather structured house and the deck that was located in the only practical area on the lot, albeit in an area that is surrounded by setbacks and cut off by a stream. We're not advocating for rights superior to our neighbors, but instead want to be able to use our grandfather house as it was intended and designed with a deck as it has been for nearly the last 35 years. Moreover, like I said, in light of our easement and the right to use the 18 feet of Ms. Amundsen's property, Granting our variance would not be giving us any additional rights at all, since the deck would be effectively 28 from the property line and not in the setback. Therefore, we're not seeking to expand. We're just looking to keep what has been there for 35 years, a small, physically unremarkable 7 by 20 foot deck. And given that the deck and the doors are in the setback, nothing smaller could be done to get the deck into compliance. Finally, without the variance, we will lose our ability to use the house that was designed and constructed and which has been legally grandfathered. Consequently, we feel that we satisfy that standard. So in closing, members of the board, we believe that we have satisfied the standards. The code requires us to substantially satisfy those 8 standards, and we believe we have substantially satisfied those standards as the staff has found, and we respectfully request that the board grant our variance application.
Thank you. You have 0 minutes or 3 seconds remaining for rebuttal. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board? Are there any questions of the applicant by staff? None. So is there anybody from the public wishing to testify in case 2020-0042? Seeing none, are there any questions by the board of the applicant by the board? I'm sorry. Does staff have any rebuttal? No. You have 3 seconds for rebuttal, so I'm assuming that's not anything for rebuttal. I believe the public hearing is now closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Positive or motion from Stephanie Eicher. Second? Second from Ms. Emerton. Ms. Eicher, would you like to speak to your motion? State your motion.
In case number 2020-0042, I move to approve a variance to allow a deck to encroach 15 feet into the required 25-foot front setback, subject to department recommendations 1, 2, and 3 on page 4 and 5 of the staff packet.
Ms. Eicher, could you speak to your motion?
Yes, I would like to adopt the findings that were articulated by staff and presented in the packet with regards to standards A, B, C, D, E, F, and G and H. I concur with staff that all 8 standards are substantially met, and I plan to support the motion.
Board Member Emerton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Eicher's comments, and I also intend to support the motion.
Are there any comments further from the board?
Excuse me, this is Brad DeNoble. Can I interrupt? I know it's not my time, but I did want to just mention something about the department recommendation number 2.
Your time is up, I'm sorry. Oh, well, it looks like Colin is going to speak to have a response.
I'm sorry, did you say I could speak?
Staff is going to speak shortly.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yes, I had meant to mention in the staff report, I neglected to do so, but condition 2, it says resolve the shed and shed canopy stream setback encroachment with watershed management services in the planning department. So watershed management services identified what looked like an encroachment in, the shed on the property into a stream setback. So it's unrelated to the variance for the deck, but Watershed Management Services and the municipality did want to make sure that that was resolved, and so this was a condition of the variance approval. However, in the meantime, Watershed Management Services did go and take a look at the shed, and very recently, within the last couple of days, they were able to determine that the shed was in fact not encroaching. So if the board wishes, they could remove that condition, but it is a resolved condition, so essentially, even if it were to remain, the petitioner has already resolved that condition. Thanks.
Would the board like to make an amendment?
I was going to say, this is Stephanie, and I was the original motion maker, and given that it is of no consequence to leave it in, I would probably be inclined to just leave the motion as is. If other board members feel differently, then I would agree to amend as well.
Ms. Emerton?
I agree with Ms. Iker.
Thank you. I believe, are there any comments from any additional board members? With no additional comments, I believe we're going to take a vote.
Ms. Iker?
Yes.
Ms. McKay?
Yes.
Chair Hickok?
Yes.
Mr. Hale?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Ms. Emerton?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Savina?
Yes.
Thank you.
With 8 yeses and 0 noes, this motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much, members of the board. We really appreciate it.
With that being the last public hearing, I can move on to reports, although I don't have any reports before me. Any board member comments?
Nice job, Chair Hickok, doing your first meeting.
Thank you. Well, it looks
Agreed.
like I will entertain motions to adjourn.
So moved.
That was Ms. Iker. Second, from Ms. Emerton. We are now adjourned. Thank you.